Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing? How's everyone doing today? We got a bit of news to cover. We actually have some really interesting stuff that I think we should talk about. Some of it I'm going to be bestowing insider SUSE knowledge. It's like old insider SUSE knowledge. But yeah. The reboot is complete. The stream is back online. You know, that is probably the big piece of news this morning. I find it a very interesting piece of news. So we can like dive right into this. I find it really interesting because the big piece of news this morning was something that made AWS feel good. You know, AWS has notoriously been blamed for taking down the internet a couple of times. You know, that's kind of their claim to fame, or at least how I think about it. I'm sure that they think their claim to fame is something else, but I think it's a pretty cool claim to fame when you say, when we break, we take down half the internet. Well, today, CloudStrike takes down computers around the world. The really interesting part to me, the part that broke Windows computers. So this made sense for like hotel reservations. And sadly, there was like EMS and things like that who they also had Windows systems. But I noticed an interesting thing here beyond Windows system, because again, reservation systems where you're actually calling an agent and they're working on a Windows computer protected by the CloudStrike thing. But this actually took down parts of the cloud as well. So Microsoft Office 365 was down, which is like a cloud service. But even beyond Microsoft, there was other things that were down. One thing that I can validate was down was Charles Schwab was down as well. How this took down parts of Charles Schwab, not all of Charles Schwab was down, but parts of Charles Schwab, like their online aspects, were down. So parts of other places were down as well, which is very interesting to me because I don't know how nothing in my architectures have had a reliance on a Windows computer. So I think that was a very interesting aspect of it that I'm looking at. CloudStrike agents went on strike. Click here for 20% off your first CloudStrike license. The list of effective services in Azure was massive. Yeah, Russell, that's what I found interesting, right? Now, maybe it makes sense that there's a lot of Windows things in Azure, not Linux-based things. Like their services are built on top of Windows. So I suppose that could be. They must be running CrowdStrike on those machines. So that makes more sense to me than like the Schwab and stuff. But maybe it's something that they rely on Azure. That very well could be. I don't think Schwab is big on Azure. I don't know. But yeah, so that's kind of the big news for today. That is not supposed to be there. Nope. Oh, my bad. 1 second. All right. So yeah, that was kind of the big news in security was this CloudStrike outage that has taken down a lot of stuff. Like I said, there's 911 outages. That's our emergency services. Germany's hospital and a bunch of other places that have been hit by this. So it is a far-reaching disruption. And the fun thing is, it's causing blue screens. It's fantastic. So yeah. Oh, multi-factor? I did not see the multi-factor. Ooh. There you go. Like I said, it was super wide reaching. Just like things you wouldn't have imagined, like, or at least I wouldn't have imagined, by CloudStrike, the DLL for Windows breaking. Yeah. Okay. Wow. No, I didn't see anything on our multi-factor authentication, but I'm gonna go look now. I'm definitely gonna go look now. Was Russell, was this Microsoft's multi-factor authentication? Because that would make sense if we're talking about their services being down pretty heavily. Azure only. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say we don't leverage Azure, so that probably makes sense, at least to me, because I feel like a lot of Azure stuff was hit very hard by this. What's the AI lawsuit? So there's been a big AI lawsuit, and we'll get into that when we talk about AI. Right now we're in the security topic, but there's been a big AI lawsuit that I've been following, and there's been some stuff that's happened with it. So I thought we would talk about it. I updated you guys when it initially was launched, and so we're gonna go and now I actually think that this lawsuit has quite a bit of power to dictate like future litigation and laws around AI. So I think it's important to follow. JD Pitt, absolutely. This took down banks and other things. Absolutely. This, like I said, before this, Azure was really or not Azure, but AWS was really the only person to make the claim of taking the internet down. And there was quite a bit of things hit globally by this CloudStrike issue, which only surprised me because it's squarely locked to Microsoft. So it's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. All right, we can move on though. No, Dane's in South Central, so surviving. Oh, lucky. Actually, my cloud recommendation is to never base your central operations on your cloud provider's central operations. I've said this since 2016 when AWS had their big outage. And the thing is, if US East 1 was their central operations, and this actually happened with every single major cloud provider, because we can talk about the outage last November of Cloudflare, where their major data center, their core data center went down. And the thing is, you survive much better if you're not in their core data center. Because generally how these things are architected is that the data planes themselves operate independently. They don't have to go and check up on the mothership. Now, maybe that means you can't change your configuration or some things like that, but it's much safer to not be in their main data center. And I know that Cloudflare, I know that AWS and all of them try not to have that dependency, but inevitably you see it time and time again where they have that dependency. All right, we have a couple other things that are coming up in security, so we can jump onto those. Not too many other things behind besides the CloudStrike incident. Not too many things, and we don't have We don't have a real incident report on it yet. Like, this is breaking news. So I tried to scour to try to understand how these things impacted the different things. Like, I would love to see a retrospective from Azure. I'm going to be looking for that. If you find that, make sure to post it on the Discord, because that's going to be something really interesting to look into if Azure talks about how this brought them down. But the big thing is it made a blue screen. It made a blue screen that looked a lot like this. This is pretty much, I've been told that this is the blue screen that most people were getting. So if you see this, you know, you understand what's happened. Yeah, I had to get that for you all, just to show you the type of stuff. Thank you, Russell. This was a fantastic idea. Not that much work. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go on to some of the other things besides the CrowdStrike security incident, which again has affected quite a bit. A good way to map businesses for targeted attacks. Anyone down today has some Windows boxes in its infra? Yeah, actually, yes. All right, so let's talk about some other things. You know, it feels like the good old days. The CrowdStrike being down, SolarWind is patching critical flaws in its access right management. This feels like 2021, right? It just feels like 2021. But let's get into something that might be more interesting to you all. So if you guys are Splunk Enterprise people, there's a very easy to exploit security vulnerability. That's a 7.5. So if you're using a Splunk Enterprise, which I know that there's a lot of engineers that use Splunk, you need to be checking this out and making sure that you're not vulnerable to it, or that you patch right away. Hot page adware disguised as ad blocker installs malicious kernel drivers. So this goes to, you got to be careful with what you install. That's just the there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Another crypto exchange loses 230 million in a security breach. This is pretty standard practice for the time. Kaspersky is leaving the US. This is probably one of the bigger pieces of news. So it's laying off all its employees and shutting down operations in the United States. It did get a recent Commerce Department ban, disabling it from any U.S. entities. So yeah, if you're using Kaspersky, there you go. There you go. This was a very interesting one. I put it here. Maybe it should have been open source. I put it in security because this was really cool. We've actually, in the last little bit, we've reviewed some of these vulnerabilities, trying to understand how they're done a little bit. And Google has actually made C a little bit safer. So buffer overflows are the cause of many security issues. And basically, they added something to the GCC compiler to the counted by attribute for flexible array members, basically making overflows more difficult, or maybe, I'm not going to say impossible. I don't know. Harder to do in C. So that's actually really awesome. I'm going to post this if you guys want to learn and understand it a little bit more. I think it's actually really cool. At the end of this news, we're actually going to cover something that's pretty awesome and might have us do another video on as well. I know in this news we talked about we've talked about stuff in Kubernetes like the Wasm stuff, and we've ended up going and actually implementing Wasm on Kubernetes in one of the next days streams. So that's always fun and awesome. All right, and that's it for security. Did you guys see anything else in security? We have 4 things in AI. If nobody else has any other security issues that came up during this week. Okay. Let's jump into AI. We have some interesting news here. So, a judge dismisses most claims against Microsoft, GitHub, and OpenAI in Copilot lawsuit. I've been tracking this a little bit. I've been keeping my eye on it because I do think that as far as US law goes, this lawsuit might be the one that goes all the way and starts getting laws around AI generated or machine generated code, and how it's allowed to use, how probably these big tech companies, how they're able to use, reuse, and repurpose people's work. Now, the judge threw out most, I think there was started with 38, let's see, different things. So there was 38 claims, I think, but most of the claims except 2 were dismissed. So one of the big ones that I wanted to point out was that it was using copyrighted claims, copyrighted code, and the judge basically threw that one out because it was saying that without attribution, because the judge said that the code that it spits out is enough different that it doesn't meet the criteria. So it's not injecting verbatim. Now we have seen specific times when it has verbatim spit out open source license code, but the thing was that the judge said is it doesn't always do that, and a lot of the times it's not verbatim what one of those open source projects is doing. It's either based on it or like it or whatnot. And so that doesn't violate the open source license like that. Violated the DMCA Act because they removed without copyright management information who wrote the code in terms of use. So the two last claims that remain at this point is violating the open source license and the alleged breach of contract from GitHub. So there are still 2 claims out there. And I actually think that this looks to be very interesting if this gets to go to trial. And I'm hoping that it does, because this breach of contract is going to basically maybe help shape the laws of what's acceptable use of your information stored on a platform. And if that's a breach of contract to do this type of stuff with it. So I am, again, very much looking and watching this. I will try to keep you guys updated as it goes through. Apollo, did you miss the cloud strike? I'm afraid you did. It was at the very beginning. Security is always at the beginning, right? All right. OpenAI is releasing a cheaper, a smarter model. This is actually one thing that I've been pointing out is we've needed AI to exponentially grow. And so far, they haven't. So far, they're kind of slowing down. Now, they're making them more efficient. Which is cool and good, actually. But that's not making them better. Okay, so GPT 4.0 Mini is launching today. We're going to have to get support for it in our Rust module. And then we're going to actually update. This is basically the turbo. This is 4.0 turbo. That's what they normally would have called it. I don't know why they called it Mini. So we're going to have to update our AI to work on 4.0 Mini, and we'll get to see the difference. But that will be pretty awesome. And it's supposedly 50% cheaper than the 3.5 turbo that we're on. So that's also actually fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, it is a Windows issue, right? Check this out. That seems like a Windows issue, right? Right? Okay, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a CloudStrike problem. And it's so heavily integrated that it can blue screen your computer. Absolutely. The computer is fine. Windows is fine. Now, some could argue that the Windows kernel should have survived that. I don't know what the CloudStrike DLL does and how tightly integrated. But yes, you could make the argument that Windows should have been able to handle that. The kernel should have been able to handle that and moved on. Because this used to be the case. Whenever the GPU driver did something, you'd get a blue screen because they have a monolithic kernel architecture, and you'd get a blue screen and it would just die because the GPU driver did something. And they fixed a lot of that. They have made that issue a lot better. Absolutely, Apollo. It doesn't stem from the OS. It stems from the software. A lot of the blue screens do. A lot of the blue screens, even in past, were either the software or the firmware or the hardware that you had installed, to be fair. Windows has just gotten better at dealing with it. All right. Google brings AI agent platform Project Oscar. Oscar. It's Oscar. That's the American way of saying that. To open source. So this is an AI agent platform. I haven't used much of it. I don't know that much about it. I thought I'd talk about it because they have talked about it a little. Yeah. YouTube creators surprised to find Apple and others trained AI on their videos. Really? People are surprised about this. They should have been tuning in to the Null channel here on Merit Counts, because I could have told you that if it's publicly available, they've been training on it. They've been training Sora. They've been downloading your videos, pumping them into a matrix, and feeding that matrix through a neural net. They're doing that with everything that they can actually get their hands on, legally or otherwise. Happy birthday. Also, I know that she's not watching, but today is my daughter's birthday. First birthday we've been separated. I probably wouldn't be doing the news if we were together. But Moira, happy birthday. I know we're going to do something special later on together, but happy birthday. All right. So, yeah, anyways, I'm not surprised. That is why Sora still produces crappy videos, is because they trained on my videos. Who would have guessed? I will make sure that she knows that chat said happy birthday. That's awesome. That will make her happy. That was it for my AI ML news. Nothing else I saw. We have some open source news that I'm about to give you some old insider information about. Something is interesting. Something is very interesting here. And you know what? I'm going to see if I can't get anybody that I know, possibly Richard Brown. I know that he does a lot of the public speaking for it. I'm going to see if I can't get him on stream anytime here soon. To see if he has any public, I don't know if he has public thoughts that he's allowed to share. I will find out. And if he does, I will try to get him on stream with us. He does a lot of the open source stuff. So let's talk about some open source news. This is maybe some spicy news, depending on who you're looking at. And yeah, let's talk about it. Unless you guys have any other AI stuff. SUSE, at this point, I'm saying that this is a rumor. I have not validated it myself with my contacts inside of SUSE. SUSE requests OpenSUSE to rebrand. Now, what a lot of people don't understand or know is that SUSE and OpenSUSE are actually two different things. OpenSUSE is actually an open source project, and SUSE is actually an enterprise. And now, SUSE sponsors OpenSUSE and actually sponsors it with money, hardware. So all of the server farms that are built doing EBS are provided by SUSE. They provide engineering time. They provide a budget for other stuff. So SUSE provides a lot to the OpenSUSE community, but it is distinctly different. As we talked about a little bit last night, SUSE only uses the Open Build Service, OBS, or the Open Build Service, and SUSE uses a variety of things. They also have IBS, which is their internal builds service. But they also use a variety of other things as well. So I actually would have never guessed this coming from SUSE. Honestly, would never have guessed this. But it seems that the OpenSUSE board discusses SUSE's request to stop using its brand. That's pretty spicy. I think that they've been in a pretty symbiotic relationship because a lot of people think of OpenSUSE and SUSE as kind of the same thing, which is, I guess, maybe their problem that they have with it. But when you're using something like SLES, their enterprise Linux, OpenSUSE, provides the community additions to a lot of those things, whether it's the micro OS or those types of things. When you use a lot of those community-founded things in the SUSE ecosystem, in the OpenSUSE ecosystem, like Tumbleweed, so like I said, maybe a little bit of drama. I'm going to see if I can't get us somebody from there to comment on it. I know some outspoken people. I feel like this shouldn't be a big deal to find somebody that's willing to give us some a little bit of insider information, but we'll see what I can do. Aren't I supposed to be working? This is lunch break. I have a lunch break. Thank you very much. I do it at high noon. We got a late start. I had some work stuff to do, so I got a late start to lunch today, but yeah, I do this during my lunch. All right, let's move on. NVIDIA transitions fully towards open source kernel GPU kernel modules. This is a huge statement. Going forward, NVIDIA is giving their word as much as that, as good as that gets, that it's going to work, with the R515 driver. NVIDIA released a set of Linux GPU driver modules in May 2022 as open source with dual GPL and MIT licensing. The initial release triggered data center compute GPUs with GeForce and workstation GPUs in an alpha state. At that time, we announced that more robust and fully featured would follow subsequent releases. Anyways, not only has it gone well, we're now at the point where we're transitioning fully to the open source GPU kernel modules is the right move, and we're making that change in the upcoming R56 or R560 driver release. So going forward, NVIDIA support should be easier on Linux. This is awesome. I'm super happy about this. Yeah. Russell, that's a fantastic name. That's a fantastic name. Monta, are we getting gaming on Linux? I hate to break this to you. Gaming is already on Linux. I can't get DaVinci Resolve to work on Linux, but by golly, I can run Cyberpunk 2077 with it was hitting like 60 frames per second. It is not awful. It is amazing. It is amazing. And awful. Amazingly awful. No, why are you popping up here? I told you to start over here. Well, just give it a second. It's loading user data. There we go. It actually works really well. I've played a few games on stream, but nobody likes watching me for games, so I don't do it very often. Really? DVD. All right, I'm going to do a gaming stream just for you, DVD. It's really not that bad. I thought it was going to be worse because, like I said, I can't get DaVinci Resolve to work. It doesn't recognize my GPU, but I can run Cyberpunk 2077 without a problem. It really has worked easier than I thought it was going to. There are edge cases. Anything that uses easy anti-cheat. Anything that uses easy anti-cheat is terrible on it. Absolutely. Because easy anti-cheat doesn't work. And it becomes hard anti-cheat. By hard anti-cheat, I mean it just kicks you off the platform. So don't Alt-Tab. So I actually use i3. And one of the amazing things is I can just switch windows. So I don't Alt-Tab. Not a problem. If you would just use i3 like a real Linux gamer, then there wouldn't be a problem. That's actually the solution. Can we rank memes for this year? Okay, we'll do a meme ranking. Okay, Russell, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. Let me bring this up. That's a pretty good one. That's going up there in the S tier. So I'm not saying that Linux gaming is for everyone. It's probably not. But it's actually better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was... I guess maybe I didn't have high expectations, but I really haven't minded gaming on Linux at all, honestly. And things like this are going to make that better. You know, the biggest thing that keeps Linux from being the gaming platform is just people that have a hard enough time running Windows and Mac OS. Getting them into install Arch would be painful at best. At best. Most gamers aren't that technical. So yeah. Introduction to Moonbit, a new language toolchain. So yeah, we're in the open source section. So Moonbit, a new language toolchain for Wasm. These keep popping up, and we've tried a couple of them. We're gonna definitely have to try out Moonbit a little bit, because it's supposed to be to create efficient WebAssembly. So one of the streams that I want to do is we have some things that we've tested, and we've tested running them in Wasm and not, and Wasm is about 2 times less efficient. And we've seen that across different languages, whether it's Rust to Python. When it gets translated to Wasm, it's about 2 times slower. And so this project, Moonbit, is looking to make an efficient WebAssembly. So I'm interested to see if it does better. So yeah, anyways, I saw it. I thought I'd let you guys know Moonbit's out there. Mirantis builds an OpenStack to serve up a VMware alternative. So there's been a lot of drama around VMware. We've followed it. We've talked about it. I just wanted to show you that some people were out there building up on stuff. OpenStack, I don't love OpenStack. There's a lot of problems, I think, with its architecture that are holding its back. Also, Python. Most of OpenStack is Python scripts hobbled together. I'm sorry. This is a family-friendly stream. Python. I'll be better about that. My apologies. But it's good to see people stepping in to hopefully fill a gap and hopefully make something that's open source. VirtualBox is garbage. Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to be worse or better than VirtualBox. Don't use KVM and QEMU. Don't use VirtualBox. Ugh. Okay, so we follow some news with the Linux kernel adopting Rust. Now, one of the things in the Linux kernel that a lot of kernels have to do is kernels have to do stuff that's intrinsically unsafe, because they're dealing with that low level of stuff. And so a new proposal for Rust safety has been released. And I actually suggest that everybody goes and checks this out if you're writing unsafe Rust, because I think it would be really cool to see more of some standards around how you write unsafe Rust, like the safest way. You know, we have these for C++ and C projects. We have, these safety and guidelines for doing certain things, but we don't have them for Rust because a lot of times we're in the safe code and we just generally don't have to think about it. But for projects that require it, one that I realized required a lot of it was the AV1 encoder that I made a few little PRs for. And that required a lot of unsafe Rust. And so anyways, I think that this is really cool and a really great place to learn. If you're wanting to learn a little unsafe Rust, having a good guideline is awesome. All right, DevToys. DevToys has been notoriously a Windows-only thing. It's written in C#, it's for Microsoft, but 2.0 is getting released. So if you go to releases, and you go to their 2.0, this is now, it works on Mac, it works on Linux. You can go to their assets and boom, download your favorite Linux distribution. That's pretty awesome. I like, go get yourself a deb of DevToys. So it has a bunch of converters and stuff like that. It's an open source project. 1 second. It has, 1 second. So, DevToys. You should go check it out. It has like converters, encoders, formatters, generators. It has a bunch of different things that a lot of times you jump on the internet to do, but this is fast and easy and just locally done. Now it is in C#. It's in C#, but it's pretty cool. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to actually leave this link. Go check it out. Other than DVD, DVD does not need it. He is too good for it. I actually think it's really cool. I only got to play around with it on my Debian machine little shortly before joining this, but like I think it's a cool little toolbox of like little helpful things. How often have you gone to format a JSON string that isn't formatted and you go somewhere? Like it's just quick and tiny, and I like it. I think it's a cool project. Kudos to them. So if you, during the week, find a new open source project, one that you don't think other people have seen or know about, please leave it in the Discord, bring it here, because we talk about open source projects and let's get them the notoriety they deserve. So, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give it a star. So anyways, yeah, I just saw that, and like normally I would never give it another thought, but I just saw that they were releasing Linux support and I was super happy about that. Yeah, it just provides a bunch of little tools. Oh yeah, it even lets you convert JSON to YAML and vice versa, which is, I don't know that happens that often, but yeah, you can test regex and HXML. Like it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. Color blindness simulator. These aren't things you need all the time, but it's cool to have a little toolbox. I think it's cool. All right, let's move on. Corvus, an all-in-one open source RAG pipeline built for Postgres. All right. I think that's enough said. You can go check it out. If you're looking to build a RAG on top of Postgres, whether it's the best database or not, that's up to you. But it is a database. It's out there, and yeah. So you can go check it out. It's an interesting thing to build it all on top of Postgres, especially if you're doing RAGs. Don't tend to be super large, so it's probably doing really well. So it probably does this pretty well. So Mozilla injects Rust into Thunderbird to boost performance. I haven't used Thunderbird. It looks like it's looking really nice. I'm going to try to use Thunderbird. I saw this and I was like, I just want to use Thunderbird. I saw it as because my thing pulls up Rust articles and this isn't that interesting. But I haven't used Thunderbird in a long time. Just haven't used it. So I might give it a try. It does kind of look like a Mac app, doesn't it? It actually looked like Office to me. This also looks kind of like Office. Outlook does a little bit. Thunderbird used to be really weird. I actually didn't like how Thunderbird did stuff. Yeah, but this looks really cool. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to give it a try. See what it's like. All right, cloud news. We're on to the cloud news already. Maybe the biggest piece of cloud news. Did anybody see anything else in open source? Again, remember, you see an interesting open source project, little or big, and let's talk about it. Bring it up. Maybe there's a new version that's coming out. Maybe there's an exciting new feature that's coming out. Make sure to link it in the Discord so that we can let people know that's happening. Probably the biggest piece of cloud news that's coming out to Google this here soon. Google Docs is getting Markdown. This is going to make engineering in Google Docs so much better. Its lack of good Markdown syntax highlighting has been actually terrible, and it's actually going to start to automatically detect Markdown and have good syntax highlighting for it and everything. So I'm actually pretty excited about that because I use Google Docs quite a bit. Moving on, introducing GKE extended support. Stay on a GKE minor version up to 24 months. This is actually a pretty big deal because if you know that Kubernetes, the open source project, only provides extended support for 1 year. This means that Google itself is providing an extra year on top of what you want or need, or yeah. So this allows you to move a little bit slower if those upgrades are taking you some time. Or something that I've had a problem with is upgrades don't take a lot of time for like my application, but something my application depends on trails 6 months. And then if my app trails 3 months after that, I'm getting really, really close. So a lot of times when you upgrade your cluster, you need everything that's in that cluster. And a lot of times if you're using Kubernetes, you built on somebody else's stuff, you need all of it to be able to migrate upwards. And so this is pretty nice. The other thing that I saw here was the newest version of AlloyDB Omni features easy install and ARM support. So they brought ARM support to AlloyDB. It's Google's Run Anywhere Postgres version. And they made it really easy to run. They have a new Docker run command that just runs it on your local machine for quick and easy testing and pipelines and stuff, as well as ARM support. So if you're using AlloyDB, this is pretty cool. The ARM support could be really big on cost savings if it works well. I hate how CRDs need to be updated separately from Kubernetes. Yes, that can be an issue. That absolutely can be. OpenAI's fastest model, GPT-4o Mini, is now available on Azure AI. So go ahead and start leveraging it if you're in Azure. It's dirt cheap. It's cheaper than Turbo. It's pretty cheap. Public preview of upgrade of existing Gen 1 and Gen 2 of VMSS to Gen 2 Trusted launch. So basically there is an upgrade path from Azure Gen 1 and Gen 2 VMSS, that's their secure VM, to the Gen 2 Trusted. That's the one that has all the way down to the processor encryption and those types of things for secure boot and other things. So they have a now upgraded upgrade path that you can take, which is pretty cool. Now, we'll have to wait for their systems to come back online after CrowdStrike figures out how to fix their systems. This is you know what? CrowdStrike has also proven again why you need backups of everything, even your OS, because guess what? If you're blue screening on startup, you can't update your computer. You can't roll it back. You need an update or a backup. Okay, CrowdStrike teaching us lessons one day at a time. One day at a time. This, I believe, is because of the CrowdStrike problem. I could not get it. I don't know why, but there is a managed Java component in Azure Container Apps that came into preview. I cannot find the original article that I found 2 days ago, so you're just going to have to trust me on this one. There is something coming for the Java component, managed Java components in Azure Container Apps that came out in preview. This is what it's called. I'm going to post this in there. That's right. Microsoft said, you know what computer can't be hacked? One that can't boot. Boom. Best security. Best security. You just take the computer offline. It's flawless. It's flawless. Absolutely flawless. All right, let's get into AWS. AWS has a few little nuggets for us. Do they? Yeah. They have a few little nuggets for us. AWS Lambda introduces new controls to make it easier to search, filter, and aggregate Lambda function logs. This is a pretty big deal. Lambda's functions are notoriously hard to manage, whether it's how you deploy and roll out deployments and whatnot, but also they're logging. And so they have made new controls to make it easier to search, filter. I haven't gotten to test these new controls myself because I don't actually we have like 3 Lambdas. So yeah, but this I think could be a pretty big deal. AWS Cloud Shell now supports Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, so they're VPC. So if you're leveraging Cloud Shell, you can now use it with the VPCs. AWS IAM Access Analyzer. Oh my goodness, that was a tongue twister. AWS IAM Access Analyzer now offers recommendations to refine unused access. So a lot of times you're wanting to go through this is a security thing, make sure that people don't have access that they don't need or use. And the Access Analyzer can help now guide you to the AMI accesses that you should have. AWS Private CA now supports ARM architecture in Kubernetes. So if you're using AWS Private CA, it now supports ARM in Kubernetes. So if you also wanted to use ARM and couldn't before this, you now can with AWS Graviton instances in AWS. Fantastic. Fantastic. That was, I kind of just sped run that. Sorry, it got a little late, so I do need to get going. One thing that I wanted to do, CedarDB. I never knew what CedarDB was, but they released why German strings are everywhere. And this gave me an idea. Let me show you the article. The article from CedarDB is this, and I'm going to actually post it for you guys. Why German strings are everywhere. Many data processing systems has adapted our custom string format. Find out what makes it so special and why it's so relevant to them. All right, so this actually goes on about strings in C, strings in C++, and then what they're calling German strings, or what I like to call is G strings, because, you know, it's German strings. I'm sorry, that was a terrible joke. It sounded better in my head. That was just, I apologize. Anyways, let's move on. So how does it work? What are they talking about? And this is basically optimization of strings and how they're stored in memory. Now, it does something pretty cool, and I had an idea about this. I'm sorry, DVD. I'm sorry. That was bad. That was bad. I agree. You may cancel me for the next half hour. I deserve it. I apologize. I thought it was pretty funny. It wasn't that funny, though. All right, let's move on. It just popped into my head, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's hilarious. And then I was like, nope, not as funny as I thought it was going to be. Let's move on to German strings. Gosh dang it, clipping system. Don't do that. Let's move on. What I thought was really interesting about this was that first they broke down how C and C++ do it. And the really interesting thing here is that my understanding of how Rust does it with their strings is very similar to how C++ does it with the capacity, size, and pointer. That's my understanding. I actually just Googled it really quickly to make sure that I was understanding how Rust does it themselves. And that seems to be true. So the way that CedarDB is doing it is basically they're saying that a lot of strings are really short. And the one problem with this is that you're allocating some memory that you don't necessarily need to if it's a short string. And so what they're doing is basically optimizing for short strings. And basically saying that, well, we can hold it all on the stack if it's just a real short string, and we don't have to allocate on the heap, which means that short strings are faster and long strings are about the same as what you would get with a C++ string. So there's no real trade-off in theory. And I had a thought. I thought, what if we make German strings in Rust as a learning experience? Like, let's make a German string in Rust. I think it will be fun. So we're going to do that. We're gonna re-implement string and how it's stored. I think it will be a fantastic learning experience. I'm actually super excited about this. I was like, well, shoot, this is what we need to do. This is straight up what we need to do. So I'm excited about it. Anyways, I need to get going. That is my lunch hour. Will it support variable byte length per character? You know what? My string is probably going to be pretty dented. It's going to be a proof of concept. But we can talk about some of the requirements before we actually start creating it. Let's get a good set of requirements for it. Honestly, this is not me trying to make another string for Rust. That's not my goal. That's not what I'm trying to do here. My goal was, I thought that this was a really good learning about how to like pin memory and deal with memory in Rust, like for myself and for other people. I just thought that this would be a really cool idea, as well as a way to understand what German strings are and, you know, how to think about how we manage strings in memory. So yeah, anyways, thanks everybody for joining. I hope you have a fantastic week ahead of you. I hope to see you on the weekend stream, and have yourselves a fantastic weekend.